Hello everyone, it's Mary with Happy Pine Soap. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making a beautiful honey, beeswax, and oatmeal soap, as well as utilizing bee pollen. I'm going to go over tips for how to add sugar and honey so your batter doesn't overheat. We're also going to talk about how we can utilize oatmeal and bee pollen in soap and how to grind it into a fine powder so that you can utilize it successfully. We're going to go over some special tips about working with beeswax, which has a much higher melt point than most oils. And last but not least, we're going to show you how you can successfully work with a super fast moving batter, which this one is, so that your soap comes out the way you would like it to. So welcome, sit down, enjoy, and let's get started. Here is the recipe I created this morning in Soap Calc. I went ahead and whipped this up for you guys. Just hopefully you enjoy this one. I love making new recipes, and I use Soap Calc to make my new recipes. So feel free to check below. I'll put in the description my tutorials on how to use Soap Calc, how to resize recipes. So I have some brand new beginner videos as well, so you can start to learn how to make your own recipes. But today, these are essentially the amounts and the ingredients that we're using today. So feel free to borrow this recipe if you would like. We do have a bit higher of a lye concentration, but that's my personal preference. Our water to lye ratio is 1.5 to 1. As you see, this is a 2-pound recipe, and all of our ingredients are listed in percentages if you want to adjust a recipe, as well as ounces and grams. And I really like this recipe so far because it has a wonderful hardness level. So it should last longer in the shower, as well as our palmitic and steric numbers together equal 30. I like my recipes to be 30 and above so that they're nice and long lasting. So let's go ahead and get started with this recipe. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making a wonderful bee inspired soap. I'm lucky enough to live in a wonderful area that has lots of nature and beekeepers. So I have their local products available near me, and I'm going to try them out. We have some wonderful honey made in the Arizona desert here, as well as some bee pollen. This is from the Golden Hive up in Flagstaff. And we have some yellow beeswax from Brambleberry that we're going to add. And I'm also going to put some rolled oats to make this even extra nurturing and fabulous for the skin. We have some molds from Brambleberry that are bee inspired as well. So we're going to do individual cavity molds. And I will show you how to spruce these up a little bit so that your finished soap looks a little extra, fancy and decorative. And then to basically grind our bee pollen and our rolled oats into a very fine powder, we're going to be using our little blender here. So I'll show you how that's done here, but stick with me if you would like to learn how to make beeswax soaps and soaps made with natural sugars such as honey. So that's what we're covering today. Stay with me and we'll get started. This is going to be a 2-pound recipe, so we're going to use 2 teaspoons of the bee pollen. Let me pour that in there. And then we're going to use a couple of tablespoons of oats as well. Here's our rolled oats. We're going to add 2 tablespoons of these into our bee pollen and grind them together. Oats add a natural exfoliation that's gentle, and they have skin benefits as well. I went ahead and ground our bee pollen and our oats. As you see, it's a nice fine powder now, perfect for adding to our oils later. And I only had to grind these for about 15 seconds, basically. And so it formed this really nice fine powder. So I used a NutriBullet. You can use any type of food processor or any kitchen equipment you have that can make it basically become a fine powder. So as you see, these molds have some cute little designs in them, some little indentions. Here's a cute little bee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine some mica. This is King Tut, by the way, from Mad Micas. And I'm going to combine it with a lightweight oil, and I'm going to blend it together. And then what I'm going to do is brush it into the cavities of these molds so that when our beeswax soap is poured, it will have this beautiful gold top to it when the soaps are popped out. So it's just kind of an extra way to make your soaps fancy. And so I thought I'd point that out in case you were also interested in doing something similar. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of our King Tut. Let me measure it out here. And then for our lightweight oil, I'm going to use sweet almond, and I'm going to put in 1 tablespoon of sweet almond oil into our mica. And now we're going to just blend together with a mini mixer. So what we're going to do is we're going to brush the gold onto our molds. If you have any type of cooking brush, that will work just fine. Probably even a paintbrush. And essentially I just kind of squish it around in there and make sure it looks nice and uniform. All right. Let me go ahead and finish the rest of these and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, here they are. This one, the oil does tend to sort of seep more towards the middle, so I will probably just gently use the brush on it one more time before I pour the soap. But these, as you can see, nice even layer of the gold. And then I also am going to do just some small butterflies as well. I'm going to use these butterflies at a later date for a future soap design. And so some of the extra soap, I just want to make some cute tiny butterflies as well. We have our hard oils all measured out and ready to be microwaved. This includes our palm, our coconut oil, our beeswax, and our shea butter. I've started heating the oils. Notice the beeswax has not melted, and that's because beeswax has a much higher melt point, around 170 degrees. So we're going to need to actually heat all of these hard oils to about 170 to get this beeswax to melt. And then you're going to want to keep your hard oils, or actually your combined oils by the time we get the olive oil in as well and the castor, you're going to want to keep your oil mixture above 145 so that this beeswax does not start to solidify. If it does, you'll get chunks of solidified beeswax forming in the soap instead of a nice smooth mixture, and nobody wants that. So let's keep melting this till it gets to about 170 degrees. All right, as you see, we have our hard oils above that 170 to about 175. We're going to start adding our olive oil and then our castor oil. And you want to make sure this mixture stays above 145 as we soap. So 145 degrees and above is the correct temp to make beeswax soap. The olive oil and the castor oil have been added, and as you can see, it dropped our soap temp rapidly to 141. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this aside just for a brief moment, and when I'm ready to soap, I am going to gently heat it to 145 before I actually combine the lye. But let me go ahead and show you how we add sugar to this recipe as well. We are going to add 2 teaspoons of our honey. This is raw honey, by the way. And then what I'm going to do is I'm gently going to mix it with some hot water, and we're going to add it to our lye solution. So let me measure out 2 teaspoons, and then I'll get back to you in just a second. I am back. I added about a tablespoon of hot water, and I just want to carefully melt this honey a little bit where it becomes kind of a watery slurry. And then I'm going to add it to our lye water that's sitting aside, that was pre-made. And that way, hopefully, we avoid overheating and scorching our beautiful beeswax soap. And by the way, honey is a sugar. And for those who don't know, honey has a tendency to rapidly heat up in soap. It can cause all sorts of problems, from scorching to volcanoing over your soap mold to cracks from overheating. So We're trying to avoid that by soaping in individual cavity molds, which don't hold heat as well. And we're not going to oven process this batch. We're going to keep it on the counter and let it just cool off naturally. And hopefully that will keep our soap from overheating. All right, you see how that's a lovely honey colored and it's like the consistency of water now. So it looks like the honey is melted in our hot water, and let's add it to the lye. Our lye solution has been sitting aside and it's about 94 degrees. And let's go ahead and add carefully our honey slurry. Hopefully this will not have any problems doing it this way. Set that aside. We'll gently stir. It will probably heat up and turn a slightly different color, if not a majorly different color. Adding sugar to lye, it's very common to see a color change with sugar. So don't be shocked or surprised if this happens. As you can tell, the lye water has already turned a weird shade of amber pink. But I have read that it does that, so I'm not shocked. And look, see the sugar? It heated up our lye water by almost 20 degrees already. So there you go, sugar and lye. It does a chemical reaction and heats up rapidly. And it will heat up even more when it hits our oils, which is why we're not going to add our soap into the oven, and we're going to soap in cavity molds. Okay, I think I'm pretty happy with that. It appears to be behaving itself. Now on to adding the lye to our oils, and we'll get started. I almost forgot to add, the fragrance here is Love Spell from Brambleberry, and I have it pre-measured. So don't forget your fragrance as well. I have that set aside and ready to go. All right, I've reheated my oils because they were getting low in temp. They're now about 150. And what we're going to do is we're going to add our wonderful bee pollen and oats now. And I'm going to use the stick blender to blend these in nice and uniform. That's pretty well mixed in. And I think I'm going to add the fragrance in at this point as well. Get everything ready to go because this recipe is going to move fast once we add that lye. This is the point where you don't want to mess around. You got to get going, because this is a recipe that's a little bit more finicky. So maybe not for the complete beginners. You want to have a few batches underneath your belt before you start working with sugars and things like beeswax. All right. Let me put this aside. And let's go ahead and add our lye. I'm gonna switch over and put this spatula, the bigger one, in. Here we go, guys. All right, let's get going here. Kind of scrape that lye off. There we go. All right, you don't need to stick blend too much because it's gonna move fast. And I can already tell it's a moving. Let me put that down and get to work here. Ooh, it is hot. The bowl is hot, guys. Ooh, sugar is no joke. It is hot. Trying to get it in here. Ooh. Ooh. This is not pretty. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to try to gently scrape it. All right. Let's kind of get this in here. You know what? I have this to the rescue, baby. Yeah, there we go. Whoops. You know what? This is going to be messy. Ooh, I'm wasting soap. I don't like wasting soap. No. All right, let's see if I can scrape the other sides. Get it in there. You can tell how fast it's moving. It's like pudding already, guys, in case you haven't noticed. So working with sugar, you gotta be prepared for extremely, extremely fast moving batters. Let me scrape this off over here and try to get some of the extras poured back in the bowl. All right, let's see if I can do this. All right, that's back in the bowl. Whoops, I don't want to dig in the middle here. All right. Whoop. All right, I'm happy with these. Let me get the small butterflies. All right, I have managed to get them all in the mold as best as I could and clean them off a little bit. As you see, the batter is already darker. It's heated up. It's gonna go through its own gel phase. I even managed to get some in the butterflies. And then whatever was left over went in this guy over here. So none was wasted as best as I could. So we are not gonna oven process these. We are gonna let these just sit on the counter until they are nice and hard. And then we'll pop them out and we'll even do a lather test to see how they lather and how this particular recipe performs. So join me in just a little bit as we let these set up. So I waited a little bit over a day before popping these out. They were quite easy to pop out. They just came right on out of these molds. And as mentioned earlier, the mica is completely optional. If you don't really want the gold mica, you can completely skip it. I'm sure these molds would be just as adorable without it. In fact, I really enjoy the natural beeswax color of the soap. It has a beautiful golden color just by itself. And I love how the bee pollen and the oatmeal, it's actually speckled as well, as you can see here. So it's a really lovely natural looking soap. So the gold mica really isn't even necessary. And in fact, in this particular mold, I wasn't as happy with how it turned out. I think next time I might just paint the bees only. I think that would actually look better than trying to do the entire hive. But, you know, you live and learn. With each soap batch, you learn something new and you correct it for the next time. So that's kind of the nature of soaping and soap making and just handmade goods, is you learn as you go along. And here are our cute little butterflies. These actually popped out easily as well. Thank goodness the beeswax and this particular recipe is a harder recipe. You might have to wait, say with a different recipe, you probably would have to wait even upwards of a week to pop these out with, say, a softer recipe. But this recipe is nice and hard and they popped out easily as well. I do have recipes that are soaps that you would need to wait a few more days before unmolding. They're ones that have very intricate designs. So their soap recipes are basically for recipes you would need a lot of working time and intricate, complex designs. And so they're a totally different recipe than the one I use today. So feel free to check the description below for some of those additional recipes for designs that are complex as well. But yeah, this one's just a very simple, straightforward one, perfect for molds or just perfect for, say, a loaf with no other colors or design elements because it moves so incredibly fast. And there you go, cute little butterfly. I'll have to think about what I want to use these for. And then our lather test, by the way, I do notice a difference between hard and soft water. So the Flag House has very hard water, which cuts the lather a little bit. So this recipe is not as copious with the lather as some of my other recipes, which is not uncommon for beeswax, which can cut the lather a bit. But it's not terrible. It's more of a creamy lather, I would say. And then soft water will make this lather better. And as promised, here is the still photo of today's recipe. I sure hope you found this tutorial helpful. Feel free to drop me any questions below if you have them. I'll do my best to answer them. I always appreciate your comments and your feedback, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next soapy tutorial. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend.